Hello, everyone. This is Marty Poniatowski of AMD, and I have the pleasure today of having a discussion with Mr. Shannon Terry, the Chief Advanced Analytics Officer at Nationwide Insurance. Hello, Shannon, and welcome.
Good morning, Marty. Thank you for the time today, and thanks for the audience.
One topic that we talked about the other day was what you described as the business of promises. And you gave that overview earlier about how important it is. The work that you do is really important and it's personal, right? Protecting one's property. And, I mentioned life insurance and so on. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think sometimes when we talk about AI, and it's a little bit in the antiseptic sense,
Mhm.
and you really take very seriously the business of promises that you're in. And I think our listeners would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. I use that phrase when I talk to folks because I think it's a business that can be hard to imagine. I have a
Mm.
friend. I have a friend who's an artist, and once he was telling me that we were having a dinner, and he said, you must find it really hard to relate to what I do for a living. Art and his choice to sort of take that as a career track, right? And and I listened to him kind of talk about it, and I said, well, but think about what we do, right? It's really the business of promises. It's also quite abstract. Um, if you think about something like life insurance, right, you're asking somebody to thrust themselves into the counterfactual universe, where they're not here. So I have a son who's wrapping up college right now, and to imagine if I'm not here, what happens to my family, what
Hmm.
happens to my son, my wife.
Right.
These are really personal matters. Or you think about living in retirement, right, and your nest egg, right, the money you plan for that future. So a lot of our products are about thinking about these counterfactual universes where, again, things happen, and now you're trying to figure out how to go forward, or it's distant in the future and it's really hard to relate to, retirement when you're the age of my son, for example, right? He can't even imagine what that world's going to be like. And so I use that language promises because it creates a little bit of a personal connection. As you said, it is personal. I like that you use that word, Marty. It is a very personal thing. And I think that sort of belief system that we approach as we think about data and treating the data as if it were our own, it really lends itself to having a good responsible mathematical, statistical, and AI machine learning practice.
Right.
Right? We don't want to use data in a way that I, as a consumer, wouldn't want my data to be used. And so, again, being really clear with our privacy policies, being really clear in how we interact with our consumers, what we collect, why we collect it, and what we do with it. Right? These seem very natural to us because we think about that personal nature of our business. We want to be there again to protect people, businesses, and futures with extraordinary care. And to do that, you have to treat their data with that same extraordinary care. It starts
Hmm.
right there to build these products, to price these products, and calculate those risks and so on that are all part of those product chassis sets. So, but I think the promises is just something everybody can kind of connect to on a personal level, and so I like to use that language, and it reminds us again that we are not using the math to be reckless or whimsical or irresponsible, and that's really, I think, a good mental framing.
What a great overview, Shannon. Thank you for that. I think that a lot of people, going back to my lunch panel events and the customers I speak with individually, are very concerned about AI and ethics and where this is going. So maybe there's a way for you to be on these boards when they go about making the decisions, because I love everything you're saying about integrity. And I also love the fact that, again, going back to AMD, Advanced Micro Devices, and Hewlett Packard Enterprise, HPE, when you're in the technology business, you think of technology as being, okay, it's transistors and magnets or whatever. But the decades I've been doing this, I get to work with customers on such hugely beneficial projects. You mentioned the Children's Hospital. I have the chance to work with several hospital systems, and the work that's being done in the AI world that benefits people, that technology companies like mine are part of. is really rewarding. And you also, brought up your friend who's an artist. We have a we have a client device that enhances creativity, and everything that we're doing in the technology world, it's across the spectrum. It's not just transistors. It's helping people either perform their jobs better or more efficiently, helping people, making people more creative. I love where technology's gone over the course of my career, and I love everything you're saying because for a company like Nationwide Insurance to really have all the people that are relying on your company, uh, taking that seriously and benefiting them, I just think is really important. I don't always think that people think about big businesses as being so personal, but that's really coming out in this interview, Shannon. The way that you view your customers, your clients as people, and I think a lot of people watching this really have an appreciation for it. Well, we covered a lot of technical topics. How about some closing remarks, Shannon? We kind of went across the spectrum of AI, generative and otherwise, data, hallucinations. We talked over a lot. When from a from a summary standpoint, what comes to mind here? What would you like the viewers of this video to take away?
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Marty. Well, first off, I think regardless of what your business is, whatever it is that you're doing, right? If someone in the audience is listening, I think there's a lot of philosophy and sort of strategic anchor points that come with just thinking about data as the fuel rather than the exhaust. And I forget who to attribute that quote to, but somebody kind of talked about that, right? Treating data as fuel rather than exhaust, because it's really easy to think about just data rolling off, streaming off your operational processes, and right, maybe you capture it and you sort of think about it after the fact, but being really intentional about what you collect and what you capture up front, being very purposeful about how you frame problems, how you choose to use data, being very appropriate, right, with third-party data sources too, right? There's a lot of data out there for individuals, um, right? But you've got to be very careful. You're not just picking up data and trying to mine it and see what you can squeeze out of it. I think those approaches generally, right, come with a great deal of risk. Now again, if I'm using technology like generative to right. I love to cook, Marty. I don't know about you. I love to eat and I love to cook. And when I'm cooking, right, I can think about, generative can be fantastic when I'm thinking about crafting a recipe or something, right, or trying to experiment, or as you said, maybe doing something very creative. But again, for foundational work we're doing here at Nationwide, very careful where we would use a technology like that, right? So being very intentional with how you frame problems and using the appropriate methodology.
Mhm.
It's the classic sort of analogy. Everything looks like a nail when all you have is a hammer. And so we look at the assortment of things that we've been doing again for 98 years to protect people. And that goes back to very traditional statistical methodology, general linear model family, all the way to the most contemporary math out there, right? Including generative. But we're going to use the right methods for the right problems. And I really would encourage folks in the audience to think about, again, being intentional with the data, being intentional with the problem framing, the intentionality, what is the challenge or opportunity you're pursuing, and then again, applying the right methodology. All of these things said, again, depending on your business, being mindful that the human capacity for empathy and judgment is something that's thus
Mhm.
far is not well emulated on silicon yet. Perhaps that day will come, but at
Mhm.
least in this moment, we think that it's really important to marry the best of human with the best of the data and math that we can bring.
Great remarks. Yeah, I'm afraid I'm only interested in the latter, which is the eating part. But I mean, how many times have I mentioned lunch panel events? So you know what's top of mind with me all the way. And I do have about 10,000 restaurants within a half a mile of me. So, well, this has been great, Shannon. I think that, boy, you really represented your firm and your team in an exemplary manner. I think that people who didn't know about a lot about Nationwide are very impressed. I know I am. So thank you very much for the time today. Thank you for our sponsors of this interview. I'm not sure that I've had the chance to speak with anybody more impressive than Mr. Shannon Terry of Nationwide Insurance. and this has just been a great pleasure. Thank you very much, sir.
Marty, thank you. And thanks to our audience and our sponsors. Really appreciate the chance to talk with you today.